as Dr. Rishikesh remarked, Kerala state recently hit international headlines. A cover story on Economist itself when he eradicated extreme poverty in the state. It has indeed been a remarkable journey for a state that is characterized by one of the highest rate of poverty, 59% in 1973, to the lowest in India. Now, in 2011-12, it was 7.05. And since then, there has been problem about measurement of poverty, debates, and so on. I don't want to enter into that, but updated non-official projections of 2022-23 based on household consumption expenditure survey suggests that Kerala's rate has fallen now to 0.71%. Now, if we adopt multidimensional poverty estimates of Niti Aayog, Kerala is the lowest at 0.55%. Now, this transformation of a state from top of the poverty ranking to the bottom has not been the outcome of any one single or a bunch of projects or schemes. Rather, it was a result of a development strategy, redistributive development strategy, which mainly had three components: interventions by mass movements for land distribution, raising of wages, and so on. Two, public provisioning and universalization of education and healthcare. Three, a number of poverty alleviation programs and schemes, welfare schemes that have been introduced over the period. So all these have contributed to this very rapid decline in poverty. It's a remarkable journey. So much so, today Kerala would be ranking, say, in a hypothetical ranking, say HDI, something between 30-35 in global ranking, not at the bottom. SDG, it would be slightly even higher. So, uh, so this is a very remarkable achievement. You can ask any questions on this process, but I don't want to go into the detail. But we realized that there are a number of households in Kerala which are not beneficiaries of these programs that we implemented. See, in a sense, they have benefited, but they are caught in a vicious web of underdevelopment or poverty, so that normal schemes don't reach to them. And therefore, I believe we have to address it specifically. We define such households as households under extreme poverty. That's the kind of socio-economic development process and development schemes that were implemented in Kerala. These households were outliers, not beneficiaries. They could not benefit from them either because of their structural constraints for specific features of households and so on. For example, if there is no able-bodied person to work, well, they cannot benefit from employment programs and so on. They may not have even the minimum income to buy ration and so on. Suppose the household, the majority are differently able or ill, well, then that would affect them utilizing many of these schemes. So suppose they are vagabonds, don't have house or a land piece of plot, well, they wouldn't be caught in any of these safety nets. So it was important to identify them and and have a program addressing such households. I myself can tell you my experience. I was 20 years representing a constituency central part of Kerala, Alapi. And it was only in the 15th year of my legislative representation that I suddenly realized there were some households in my constituency who, for some reason or other, were invisible to me. In the 15th year in my election campaign, happened to stumble upon a household, a mother and child, living almost in a cowshed attached to a house. Ask them, they don't have a ration card, they don't have a health insurance card, they don't have, say, employment card, labor card. The basic entitlements are denied to them. That it opened that there may be such other households. So realize this household was a part of a small tribal community that existed in the constituency. They are scattered, therefore they're just covered up by other activities. Few of them have joined the mainstream, rest are virtually ostracized. For simple reason, not simple reason, complex reason, that the men are very alcoholic and therefore despised, kept away. And women, say, in the house, hidden in the house. So I was ashamed that even I had failed to notice them after being 15 years a representative. So I made it a point with one of my uh, uh, colleagues to visit each of these houses, talk to them. And then, you see, just realize normal schemes will not reach out to them. You have to prepare a micro plan. I have used some of these fishing schemes, but really find out what do they want and plan for each household. Very recently, District Panchayat in Alapi has published our experiences in micro planning for about 80-85 of these houses. Now, men wouldn't accept us for reasons many, but women did. So, women became the agents of change. Every one of these women were given factory employment. Because I was minister, we could do that. And that transformed them within a year, mainstreamed them. They became the agents for implementing the health program, the education program, culture program, and finally men also were protectors. Based upon this is not the only experiment. There are other experiments also. This is called the P.K. Kalan program. P. Kalan was a tribal leader. So um, this P.K. Kalan program was designed after the experience in my constituency. On the basis of these and other uh, poverty programs, finally it was announced by this government, the first cabinet decision, that extreme poverty defined in this manner, that households who are so marginalized that the mainstream activities and development programs do not, they would be identified, they would be lifted from the poverty. So now, how to identify such families? It was a very long, year-long process. There's no point in conducting a survey and so on. So it was through focus group discussions in every ward. That is some 16,000 meetings. Okay, the Anganawadi workers, the Asha workers, Kudumbasri workers, they all came together, tried to examine from their database families which would fit our description. Now, I must mention one point which I forgot, that one important element intervention that brought down that poverty rate in Kerala was democratic decentralization. Just a very, very, because um, a number, almost all the poverty alleviation programs were handed down to the local governments. And one important outcome of decentralization in Kerala was the emergence of a network of women neighborhood groups. It's not self-help groups, it's neighborhood groups. Women belonging to the neighborhood, everybody has a right, irrespective of their caste, political grouping, or religion, to be part of the network, whose direct mission was to eradicate poverty from Kerala. In fact, it's called Poverty Eradicated. So there were very experienced cadres, namely one, who could enter into such a discussion, focus group discussion. And the result was something like a 1.8 lakh list, household list. All right. After that, there were other poverty alleviation programs. The Destitution Free Kerala program was another, which was run by Kudumbasri itself. So beneficiaries of existing programs were removed. So that gave us a number of 80,000. Then each of these households was surveyed for risk factors. And those households which conformed to our risk hierarchy were considered, identified as extreme poverty households. So it was a kind of iterative process spread over an year that finally you reach this number 64,000. Now, this is not very much off the mark, in fact. If you take the multidimensional poverty estimate of Nidhi, the multidimensional poor in Kerala would be 48,000 households. And if you take the household consumption expenditure survey estimate, unofficial, it would be, um, say, something like 62,000 households, or 64,000 households, 62,000 households. So we thought this is not very much off the mark. So this is how the families were identified. We didn't take anybody from the existing schemes because they are already covered by those schemes. They are beneficiaries. So now this 64,000, Kudumbashree and the local governments prepared microplans. The problems of each families are different. Normally, governments run on schemes, and schemes of its rules laid down, and you can actively put that thing. Here, all rules are removed. The local government would drop a plan which was required. Okay, if some house were to be fed every day, there is no other way. There's nobody even to cook in the house. Okay, they would give them food in the house. If somebody house daily has to be taken to the hospital, well, then that would be done. So that freedom was given. Total expenditure would be something like 1,000 crores, around 1,000 crores for all these activities together. The micro plans, for example, involve the food. 20,648 families were given daily food. For this, 18,438 are given food kits which they cook themselves. 2,210 families cooked food 3 times a day is delivered to the house. Okay, that's how the food. Second risk factor was related to health. Now, health, 29,427 families require special health care. That is, comes to 85,221 individuals. Among them, 14,862 were single member families. 35,955 persons are given regular medicine supply without fail. 219 persons were hospitalized. 1,279 are given regular transport support to go to the hospital. 5,777 persons are given palliative care. 7 persons have been provided organ transplant. 579 have been given assistive devices, and so on. So the health program is drawn up with health volunteers and the PHC in the locality. Now for the income, those who don't have income, well, 4,394 households were given self-employment, small enterprises. But 3,820 were given wage employment by Kudumbashree, 272 by the local governments, and other departments 212. So just a combination of self-employment and wage employment. 35,000 families were given, you know what, labor cards. See, this is the invisibility of the real poor, you see. The most important entitlement to them in a state like Kerala, 35,000 had to be given, nearly half labor card. So you ensure they do get an income one way or other. And housing, that is the fourth factor, 4,677 families were given support to build houses, for which nearly half of them were also had to be given land. About 5,600 households house improvement had to be given. So it is very, the kind of activities can be divided into three. Something which could have been given immediately. That's the legal entitlements, health card, insurance card, and so on and so forth. The government entitlements immediately. So that was done in the first year itself. But Housing, etc., particularly when you had to get the land, etc., was built over, spread over 5. And during this period, they were given render houses. Okay, they removed from their place or the street, houses were rented, they were put up there. Some are still in the rented houses, but houses are being built for them. Then there are intermediate programs like healthcare or giving self-employment and so on and so forth. So every family has a micro plan which is implemented by local government and Kudumbasri. Now that there's a big challenge, how do you ensure that they don't relapse into the old state? So a kind of very robust information management system has been instituted so that there will be regular feedbacks and there would be regular checks. In fact, every household before declaration on November 1st or death of removal of extreme poverty, every household was visited by somebody from the block. Then 20% were checked at the district level. At the state level, we took 1% sample and thoroughly checked the claims are true or not. Besides, halfway through the program, we had a social audit. Kerala is one state with a very robust social audit system for Kudumbasri, where all Kudumbasri, not Kudumbasri, the MDNREA works are under social audit, 10%. So this they were given independent right to do the social audit and make recommendations and which were accepted. So it is after this thorough checking that November 1st we declared Kerala free of extreme poverty. Now, what now? We don't want to rest on these laurels. Okay, we have removed extreme poverty. Poverty is still there. Nobody argues there is no poverty. Relative poverty will always be there. But we can always define absolute poverty in terms of income or in terms of consumption, in terms of nutrition, which was our traditional poverty line, or in terms of multidimensional risk factors, which is multidimensional. So it is possible to identify an absolute poverty line, which will be much above the present poverty line instituted by Niti Aayog or the central government. We call this absolute poverty, removal of absolute poverty in Kerala. We have not drawn the line. But all the poor defined with respect to certain risk factors, visible risk factors, because that would give it much higher transparency. The Kerala government recently, the local government elections have declared this as a next goalpost that will remove the absolute poverty from the state, which would mean, say, the entire tribal population definitely would be, because they were not added here, all of them, only 6,000 of them added, because they are already in other programs, but no, they will be all brought. All the marginalized communities like fisher folk, etc., would be brought in. So we have just to define what would be the criteria on which we'll define absolute poverty. But we have understood one thing, removal of absolute poverty. Now this is a strata where normal schemes can reach out to them. They can be the beneficiaries. Therefore, biggest intervention is going to be in women's employment. That's already decided something. Now in Kerala, if you take above the age of 25, I'm saying it from the PLF, from the Government of India survey data itself, say about 25, 95% of the men are employed. But if you take women, only 25% are employed. It's a sharp difference. The target would be to raise the women participation to 50%. I'm not going to count the unemployed helpers, I mean, unpaid helpers in the houses. Um, so it would mean some 30 lakh women will have to be given employment. Now that will just transform the economic situation of the poor household. Say, suppose in a village, panchayat, you are giving 1,000 persons, women, local employment. They cannot go abroad or outside like men, but they will be given local employment. Such employment do exist in Kerala. 40 lakh migrant workers are there in Kerala. Therefore, there is no dearth of job in Kerala. So suppose we are able to give 1,000 women job in a village. You know what is implication? Even at 10,000 rupees, it will mean 12 crores of income to the poor. So employment holds the key. So what stands in the way of giving them employment or they going and working? One, gender, gender division of labor. That has to be broken. Two, double burden the house. So you have to bring in community kitchen, you have to bring better creches, uh, geriatric care, better geriatric care, and security for women at the workplace. It means a social revolution in Kerala. That's it. See, so poverty alleviation becomes a big change, a social changing, empowering women also. So this is our next target: removal of absolute poverty. And key element in that going to be providing women with a decent job at the locality itself. So currently, I am working in that program. So those who are interested can uh, talk about it later. I'll stop. So what I want to say is we are not going to stop here. We are eradicated poverty. Everything is done. No, we are going to go further. Removal of absolute poverty.
Thank you, Thomas, sir, for letting us know the little nuances of where it started and the collective efforts of multiple agents in taking the state and its people where it is today. Before I invite the audience to interact or ask questions, I have some quick questions. Just adding on to what you had already mentioned. Um, I believe Kerala historically has recorded the highest literacy rates, lowest infant mortality, longest life expectancy, and there are so many things on which we can be proud about. So, to what extent do you think these indicators directly correlate with extreme poverty eradication? And is there anywhere where we have fallen short or requires some sort of complementary interventions to strengthen that as well?
Okay, now universalization of education. Education has been the prime mover of social change and so on. Its economic impact, I will explain in a sentence. Even the ordinary unskilled workers in Kerala can read some English, sign a letter. So you see, when job opportunities opened up in Gulf, they could make, they could take advantage of it. Go, they were the pioneers. So much so, the migration didn't result in widening of inequality in Kerala till very recent period. In fact, it enabled social mobility, upward mobility. The investment by the migrants today, after they have built a decent house, the priority is in education. So this has enabled, education has enabled upward social mobility. That's very, very important. You see. Even the poorest and lowest caste, they're educated. And that gives a special mobility to them. And that helps poverty alleviation. Or say health. Kerala with the 1/20th of USA per capita income has a better infant mortality than USA. Kerala is 5, USA is 5.6. Better maternal mortality rate. Kerala is 22, USA is 24. So it's a better health, definitely, even for the poorest. Once you are in health, then it is not possible for you to utilize the opportunities. These capabilities enable you to move forward. So Amartya Sen is very right. This entitlements that Kerala was to ensure it is citizens enable them to move forward, upward, and escape poverty. That's the story of Kerala. See, it's not some poverty elevation scheme that didn't work. It has been much more democratic process, starting with land reform. Land reform gave land to this 60% of the population. That increased their bargaining power. Therefore, wages began to rise. So you have a situation where you got asset redistribution, you have income redistribution, then public provisioning of healthcare and education. This enabled to people to move upward. That's the story of Kerala. So extreme poverty is we finally realize there's a group of people who miss the boat. They fail to take advantage of this, not for their choice, but like I told you my experience. For some reason, social reasons, etc., society refused to see there is a group like this. So we search them out, identified them, and ensure they are lifted out of poverty.
Yes, sir, and I think from what you have spoken and what we have all understood, much of Kerala's success is attributed to long-term public investment in human capital. But my also one more adding on to what you had said is how did the state sustain such investments, particularly in healthcare, education, and public distribution? And I'm asking is despite having India's one of the most limited industrial bases and relatively modest revenue generating capacity, in terms of its size or any other, industrial, growth, industrial basis, how did we sustain? Probably you can also hint or tell us a bit about the Kifbi story as well.
Okay. One, Kerala, there is no much industry and so on, but per acre productivity is highest in India after Punjab. Okay,
Okay.
because of commercial crops and so on. So there was a strata of rich peasantry, traders, and so on, and this strata led social reform movement. So there was movement in every caste, from Brahmins down to SC, ST. SC struck work for months together in Trivandrum. Do you know what demanding? Not higher wages, right to go to school. Okay. So this was the pressure from below to which the government, successive government had to respond to. So, but the story of Kerala is demand from below, generated by social movements, not communist movement, predates much that. The social movements in Kerala. Now, therefore, they had no choice. See, the left government came to power in 1957, the first government. Do you know what was the share of education and healthcare? 45% of the revenue expenditure was on these two items there. Because that was the pressure. See, people demanded education, healthcare. There is a very beautiful paper by John Robinson, Lessons and Non-Lessons of Kerala, published in the 1960s. She was working at that time in Tanjavur also and Palakkad. And she writes, there are public um, primary health centers both villages. But there in Tamil Nadu, no doctor, nurse, medicine, and nobody's bothered. In Kerala, if medicine is not there, there'll be a strike in front of it. This is it. Everywhere, there's a demand from below. Now, the government had little choice. So, what was the impact? Government's expenditure on social expenditure was relatively much higher. Therefore, the social sector attainments improved very rapidly. But Kerala had to cut on this capital expenditure, investment in infrastructure. The vehicles in Kerala run half the speed of their run by the train or motor cars in outside Kerala. We don't have a high tension wire where the name, connectivity where the name, and so on and so forth. See, therefore, this achievement was at the cost of infrastructure. But we didn't lose because of that. Okay, because you invested in human resources that enabled you to go out to the Gulf. Remittances came in, and Kerala's per capita income today is 50% above national average. So we have not done anything bad. But this cannot be sustained unless you have employment, decent employment generated within Kerala itself. There a major handicap is that you don't have infrastructure. How do investment come in if you cannot provide assured electricity, connectivity, road, and so on? Therefore, we have to step up our capital expenditure. But there is a FRBM limit, 3%. You can't do that. See, you cannot borrow more than 3%. Therefore, you created an extra budgetary agency, KIFBI, which is very similar to National Highway Authority of India. And the government promised an annual grant to that so they can securitize the future income flow from the government and build infrastructure, borrow infrastructure. They have initiated construction of worth something like 1 lakh crores of investment in Kerala and have leveraged something like another lakh of crores from the central government. The National Highway Authority of India wants Kerala to pay a part of the, um, say, land acquisition cost, which is huge. We cannot pay it from our budget here. Therefore, KIFBI paid it. So KIFBI paid some 10,000 crores rupees and leveraged more than 1 lakh crores from the National Highway Authority. So this is a huge investment that has taken place. Of course, Government of India has now come up saying you are breaking the FRBM law. We are fighting it in the court. Meanwhile, we are not going to give up. We are going to change KIFBI's modus operandi. We are going to go revenue model. Let's say we will be collecting toll from the road, but the repayment period will be 50 years. So current generation need to pay only a small amount. Nobody will bother about 10 rupee payment or 15 rupee payment. That too, if you don't have to stop at that toll gate. Instead, you have cameras to send you the bill. So central government is creating a handicap, impediment. So you will change. You have to find a way to make investment in infrastructure. So this is what we are doing now. The fight will go on. See, this is simply the basically wrong with India government's fiscal policy. One hat cannot fit every head. The demand for Kerala is something very different. You take, um, say, Gujarat. Gujarat should be allowed to have revenue deficit so that it can build up education, healthcare, and so on. If you ask me what Bihar, UP, Rajasthan should do, see, they invest in big infrastructure. We know what happens. Everything just flows out of their state here. The multiplier impact of the investment is zero. Even the contractor comes from outside. What they should do, they should mimic Kerala. They should borrow, have heavy revenue deficit, and invest in education, healthcare, and so on. That will not flow out. Multiplier, social multiplier within the state itself. So you cannot have one fiscal FRBM Act for India. Indian states will have to sit with center, negotiate, and come to understanding. Okay, Kerala will have this extra budget resource, but you cannot do it indefinitely. You are given a window of 5 years or 10 years. Bus, that's it. Yeah, let's do it. That's development. That has to be negotiated. I hope I made Kippy clear.
Yes, sir. I'm actually tempted to ask more questions because it is very rare to get a person of your stature and have such direct conversation. But I'll limit with just one more question and then invite the audience. It's more specific to Kerala. I'm also, in a way, I live in Bangalore, even though I'm from Calicut, Kerala. So migration and remittances, I think, is contributing or has contributed significantly to Kerala's economy. And the critics argue that dependence of Gulf remittances or any such remittances can produce structural sort of vulnerabilities, if I may say so. How do you assess the true extent of remittances in reducing the extreme poverty? And it's and this dependence, developmental strength, is this dependence a developmental strength or a long-term risk?
Again, one, the migrants were not just from the middle class. The poorer classes also participated in it. If you want to take a travel to the Kerala coastline, you go to Chavakar or you go to Puthandop in Trivandrum. Pockets, they are no more part of the old coastal village life. They have totally transformed themselves. So the migrants came from lower strata also. It's more egalitarian. Secondly, when remittance come, there are powerful redistributive forces in the state so that a part of it would go to the poor also. You have higher wages, okay, for everything. You have wages 3 times the national average. So this is one redistributive mechanism where the remittances flow to the poor who are still in Kerala, you see. Uh, so, uh, so even sale of land to the migrant, still land prices are so there's a redistribution taking place. But you are right. There are many people who have argued kind of Dutch disease impact upon migration on Canada. So we have to understand there can be such a fallout and therefore have a very conscious policy of identifying our areas of core competence and have a development paradigm which will see rapid advance in those sectors. So we have identified them as knowledge based industries, skill based industries, hospitality based industries. And therefore, these are the sectors we are going to promote. We are preparing Kerala for such a transformation. We have defined Kerala, tomorrow would be a knowledge economy. So we look what kind of higher education do you require for a knowledge economy, preparing for a knowledge economy. What kind of skill entitlements would you require for such a economy? What kind of industrial promotion do you require for development of these sectors? So this is the new development paradigm in Kerala, that so far we have said focused only on redistribution. Now we are going to focus upon growth also. And we are not going to take growth as residual, granted. No. We are going to see that sectors which will contribute to rapid growth are promoted. But at the same time, we don't want to give up our redistributive gains, egalitarian thing. Yeah, that's a big challenge. That's why we go to KIFBI. Otherwise, the choice would be to cut down welfare in the budget and use that money for infrastructure. No, we don't want to do that. We want to ensure that welfare gains in the past are maintained and then growth take place, for which you need for some time extra budgetary investment in Kerala.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would now open the forum for an interaction. You can either unmute and ask the question directly to Thomas Isaac, sir, or if you want to type your question, please do that. I can read out on your behalf.
Hi,
Any
sir.
question? Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Myself, Veena Jaykumar. Sir, so happy to hear from you, sir. Like, I always love your wider perspective on any topic you take. So, really great, sir. Sir, so my question is I have two questions. Like, as you said, focusing on increasing women participation is really great. But you mentioned that employment is hold the real key. I mean, employment really hold the key. But do you believe in that, sir? Because what I felt was that financial independence, only when there is a financial independence, especially for women, they can, help in uplifting on or getting rid of this poverty. Along with all the schemes implemented, like as you said, we can find many invisibles. Like so many household, the women will be employed, but the problem is that they don't have financial independence, sir. So whatever they earn will be taken away by their partner or by their husband or whosoever it is. So what happens is that they end up in again those poverty traps. So I would like to know your perspective on this take. That is one thing. So is it the social revolution or is it like does employment really hold the key is one question? Like shouldn't we have a financial independence in spite of telling that we focus on women empowerment, don't we have to shift the focus on this financial independence, sir? That is one thing. So shall I ask you the second question also?
I will answer this question. Let's take forget that. Let me put it this way. Uh, Having a job, getting an income is the necessary condition. But that's not a sufficient condition. There must be also a kind of restructuring of gender relations within the house. What I would say is this would give an opportunity to women activists to intervene, to ensure that greater equality, rights for, demands for greater equality. See, the moment women go out to work, one, their work becomes visible. All right? This unpaid work in the house, not only domestic duties, but other economic activities, nobody notices. But once you go out, it becomes visible. You gain a new respect. Two, some adjustment will have definitely take place in the house here. You cannot, the husband cannot expect that the woman comes and serves him the morning breakfast, lunch, dinner. Dinner she may still, lunch he will have to serve himself. Things start changing here. Demands on kind of support women to reduce the household labor becomes an actual slogan. Let's say a woman sitting in the house and woman working in the house has very different consciousness. If I am a Marxist, my whole thesis whole approach, ideology is based upon the fact that if you become a worker, wage worker, then your consciousness is very different. You become workers' consciousness. But that consciousness is aroused by staying in the house. That's why I said it's a necessary condition. I agree with you, not a sufficient condition. We'll fight together here.
So good to hear from you, sir. I mean, really happy for that. One more question, sir. As you have already mentioned, like Amartya Sen's, we know that capabilities and functionings, as he said. So poverty means absence or lack of freedom. We know that. But whenever we speak about poverty, we tend to think about all these basic necessities like food, clothing, shelter, and so on. But don't you think that inclusion is also should also be a part of this poverty? Because whenever we speak about having getting about employment opportunities or having getting enough education or making our children educated, shouldn't we focus on the areas where they don't get access to these education, sir? So doesn't that also come under poverty?
Yes, yes.
So isn't it the right time to, like as you said, if we want to progress towards a knowledge economy, or if you want to restructure our syllabus to ensure that there is a more push towards knowledge economy, don't you feel that the basic thing of so-called eliminating absolute poverty should incorporate this element of inclusion, sir? So I would like to know your point on that.
Okay. Kerala has basically followed the capability approach. But there are households who, by their nature, cannot uh, claim those entitlements. Suppose you are differently able. How on earth can you uh, take advantages of the capability approach? Here you require care, okay, not just right, care. So you are identifying households who on their own cannot take advantage of the processes and programs in Kerala and a special support to them so that they are lifted up. Now, definitely, I have no objection whatsoever to what you asked and suggested. In the transformation to knowledge economy, you will have to ensure that women are not tied to the house in the neighborhood and so on. This is only for women who are already married and settled, who are just still capable of working. Um, but younger generation, they are going to be skilled in the college here. Everybody now goes to college. So they will be skilled in the college. Their path would be very, very different. So I I agree with your concern. Are you Malayali?
യെസ് സർ, ഞാൻ മലയാളിയാണ്, ഭാരതമാതാ കോളേജിൽ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുവാണ്.
Then you should read my new book. വീട്ടമ്മമാർ തൊഴിലിറങ്ങത്തേക്ക്. I discussed this.
സർ, ഞാൻ പഠിപ്പിക്കുക കൂടിയാണ് ഭാരതമാതാ കോളേജിലെ എക്കണോമിക്സ് ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റിലാണ്. എന്റെ PhD ഞാൻ ചെയ്തതും ഈ എക്സ്ക്ലൂഷൻ ഇൻക്ലൂഷൻ എന്നുള്ള കൺസെപ്റ്റിലെ പിള്ളേരുടെ ഇടയിലുള്ള സ്ലം ചിൽഡ്രൻ, അർബൻ സ്ലം ചിൽഡ്രന്റെ ഇടയിലുള്ള എഡ്യൂക്കേഷണൽ എക്സ്ക്ലൂഷൻ ആയിരുന്നു എന്റെ ഏരിയ.
Yeah.
എനിവേസ്, താങ്ക് യു സോ മച്ച് സർ. സോ ആസ് യു സെഡ്, സർ ആ ഒരു വിമൻ പാർട്ടിസിപ്പേഷന്റെ ഒക്കെ ഒരെണ്ണം ഓപ്പൺ ഫോറത്തിൽ ഇടും എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ.
Conclude in another 5 minutes. I have another online meeting.
Oh, sure, sir. So we have a couple of questions here, but I wish to take one question.
Rapid fire. We'll do that way.
Yes, sir. Rapid fire.
Rapid
Yeah.
fire. Yeah.
How do you explain the paradox of having around 40 lakh migrants in Kerala and job availability enough to absorb all of them and the employment provisioning role of government, Kudumbashri and LSGs? It's a long question.
Well, the aspiration levels goes up with education.
Right.
The youth cannot be faulted because of that. The rest of the world, they change the economy to meet the aspiration levels. Kerala fails. And therefore you have a situation, they refuse to work. No, that's not our job. We want different jobs. Our aspirations are different. So Kerala has to rebuild itself to meet the aspirations of educated. Kerala
Yes, sir.
needs to have such a program.
All right. So another question is, can a similar model in other states be functional, or is it that Kerala has some edge over other states because of its higher literacy quotient?
Yes, definitely. But take Tamil Nadu, for example. They follow a different route, but they are now very rapidly improving the social sectors along with the industry. So, as I told you, am very personally convinced what the Hindi heartland should do is do something what Kerala did today. Do it today. It's not too late. Educate everybody. Make them healthy. Then money doesn't flow out, and then it will have its developmental impact.
One last question. If Kerala reduced extreme poverty successfully, why are unemployment rates still high, especially post COVID? And how are these two issues interconnected?
Yeah, at one time unemployment rate was 4 times the national average. Now it has come down to 3 times, coming down. But this is because I told you, none of the educated want to continue in the occupation of their parents. Your aspirations are very, very different. And we fail to modernize our economy to create decent jobs which will attract them. So that's what we're doing. But women, large number of them, that's another paradox of Kerala. They are educated, but tied to the house. They cannot move out. Next generation women will move out, but this women generation wouldn't. Now, employing them in the local itself, which means one, skilling them. So this is a promise given to all the local employees. You take any woman from the locality, panchayat will skill them in the manner you want. Okay, just give, you want this skill, we will spend money and do that. Two, you will have to have social support for them, security to the workplace, transport, and so on. Care arrangements for the elderly and children in the house. So this is the social program.
Thank you on behalf of IEA